Cars nowadays are getting way too big, so that's why I'm excited to try out a more sensibly sized electric vehicle, the Kia Niro EV. When it comes to electric cars from Kia, everyone seems to be talking about the sleek EV6, but we can't forget about this new redesigned second-gen Niro EV. With 253 miles of range and lots of cargo space, does it hold its own against the new wave of budget-friendly EVs? And are small EVs the best EVs? Today, let's find out. Now, I'm very excited about the Niro EV, mainly because of its practical shape and its small size. I recently tested the EV6 and I really liked it, but it felt large. The visibility wasn't the best and it was a bit cumbersome to drive around crowded parking lots. For me personally, I think I'm interested in something a bit smaller, a bit easier to drive, a bit more practical, and a bit more utilitarian. There are so many huge electric SUVs and crossovers entering the market. Much like the gas-powered market, cars are getting larger, and I'm not really a fan of that. Many of these ginormous new EVs have to lug around huge batteries, which hurts their efficiency. Smaller EVs are generally more efficient, less weight to lug around, and cheaper operating costs. Now, when it comes to the exterior design, whether you like it or not probably depends a lot on what you make of these massive aero blades that are hanging out on the C-pillars. They have a bit of an Audi R8 feel, but here's the thing, these aero blades aren't just for show, they actually do some work, letting air in at the front and sending it out the back to improve aerodynamics. I think they look pretty cool. But if you're not into highlighting this bit of aero functionality, you can get these blades in the same color as the car's body. Where the curvy EV6 is all about style, the Niro EV is all about everyday usability. The squared off wagon shape maximizes cargo space and makes this small EV surprisingly roomy on the inside. But that's not to say the Niro EV looks bad or boring. Yes, it's a bit subdued, but it's actually a pretty adorable, cool looking wagon, or hatchback, or crossover, whatever you want to call it. It's slightly higher off the ground with a higher seating position than a sedan, so I guess we can call it a crossover, but yeah, it's really just a wagon. The front end of the Niro EV looks pretty cool, and the charging port is right up here in the front, and there are some significant advantages to this. Just pull straight into any charging station, and you don't have to wrap the charging cord all the way to the side or the back. And in the back, the design looks clean and tidy, nothing over the top here. Overall, it feels like a good size. The exterior dimensions aren't that large, but the interior is still pretty roomy. With the introduction of this second-gen Niro EV, Kia has seriously stepped up its game in this cabin. Overall, it feels much more premium, and they've decked it out with better tech. And there are several areas that utilize recycled and eco-friendly materials. The headliner is made from recycled wallpaper. The door panels are finished with VOC-free paint, and the vegan leather seat coverings are made from an ingredient found in eucalyptus trees. Pretty neat. And the materials are a step above when compared to other EVs in this segment. The ambient lighting is a nice touch too. But let's get real here for a second. There's an abundance of glossy black plastic, which is something I wish automakers would just move on from. Good luck keeping this free from fingerprints, smudges, scratches, and dust. It's just not going to be possible. But honestly, that's a minor nitpick in an otherwise well-designed cabin. I'm 6'3" and I fit very comfortably in here, even without putting my seat all the way back. Plenty of headroom, plenty of legroom, and even with me up front here, it still leaves a good amount of space for rear seat passengers. The seats on this top tier wave trim are 10-way power adjustable and offer decent support, but they are a touch firm. They're also ventilated and heated. The ergonomics are great, as you would expect from a Kia. Everything's within easy reach. It's easy to see out of the front of the Niro, and there's no problem figuring out where the leading edge of your car is, which should make it less of a hazard to those outside of your car. That can't be said for many large SUVs where you can barely see beyond the windshield. Visibility out the back is a bit worse, but that's becoming the case with many new cars. The backup camera is decent, but the resolution could be a little bit better. Thankfully, the Niro comes with a good suite of safety tech, alerting you of cars, objects, and people that are in your blind spots. Both the base wind trim and the top tier wave version come with a 10.3-inch digital instrument cluster in front of the driver and a matching infotainment touchscreen in the middle. The graphics look nice, everything's easy to read at a glance. The infotainment is easy to use, it's not too distracting, and the Harman Kardon sound system, available only on this wave trim, sounds really good. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are standard, but only with a wire. Wireless is not available, which is kind of a bummer. And one small gripe is that the infotainment screen is mounted a bit too low. It seems like it should be a touch higher so you don't have to take your eyes so far down off the road when you're using it. And down here, we've got another touch screen, and there's a bit of a quirk here. There's a toggle button to switch between climate and infotainment controls, meaning when you're operating the climate controls, the radio controls are missing. And when you're operating the radio, most of the climate controls are missing. So you have to look down at the screen to figure out which one is active. And if you don't, you might crank up the AC instead of cranking up the AC/DC. Okay, sorry for the terrible joke, I just felt like listening to AC/DC. It's not terrible, but I do tend to prefer controls that can be operated without taking your eyes off the road. Why do car companies feel the need to redesign climate control systems every few years? In the center, you've got that sea of gloss plastic and this easy-to-use rotary drive selector. A relatively small center console, no storage underneath here like in the EV6, which is kind of a bummer. USB port for infotainment and one for charging. Rear seat comfort is good, and as a tall person, it's a bit tight if the front seat is all the way back, but if it's positioned more moderately, it's pretty nice back here. This new Niro gets 2.4 inches more legroom than the outgoing model. A child seat fits well, but you'll have to move the front seat forward if you have a large rear-facing seat like this one. 2 USB ports in the rear, as well as vents, which are nice to have for your rear passengers' comfort. Heated seats for the rear outboard passengers as well. Fancy. When it comes to cargo space, Kia made this crossover, wagon, roomier than the previous gen, giving you a solid 22.8 cubic feet of space just behind the second row of seats. Almost as much space as the larger EV6. When the seats are folded down, you get 63.7. That's pretty impressive. And what about the frunk? It's tiny, but useful. You can fit your charging cable in here, and that's about it. Overall, I really like the interior of this new Niro EV. It's not too flashy, but very well designed. Really nice eco-friendly materials, roomy on the inside, but not too big on the outside. With the shift towards electric cars and their instant torque and insanely quick acceleration, automotive journalists have been quick to reset the bar regarding what's an acceptable level of acceleration. And I think that's stupid. Not every vehicle needs supercar level performance. And in fact, family cars that accelerate from 0 to 60 in like 3 to 4 seconds are going to get a lot of people into trouble. With the increase in vehicle traffic and congestion in cities and suburbs, insanely fast acceleration is becoming kind of pointless. And with the soaring level of deaths on US roads, it's pretty irresponsible too. So yes, by today's standards, the Kia Niro EV would be considered slow by most auto journalists. It can accelerate to 60 miles an hour in about 7.5 seconds. With the good amount of torque from the Niro's single electric motor, you'll have no problem getting up to speed in most driving situations. The brakes are great, the pedal feel is really good, there's several levels of regenerative braking. You can select that with the paddles behind the steering wheel. At the max setting, you can even do one pedal driving. I tend to like the third setting, which adds a lot of regen, but you can still use the brake pedal to come to a complete stop. There's some body lean in the corners, but the suspension is smooth, it soaks up the bumps really well, and you don't get a lot of that forward, backward sort of undulating motion that you get with a lot of those heavier SUV-based EVs. Not much wind noise or road noise either. This is a pretty nice, comfortable place to be. Okay, so what about range? This adorable little beast manages to squeeze out a respectable 253 miles according to the EPA estimates, all from its modestly sized 65 kilowatt hour lithium-ion battery pack. So that's a slightly lower range than the Chevy Bolt. But I've managed to beat those EPA estimates. I've gotten almost 270 miles on this charge. When it comes to efficiency, the Niro EV is putting up some really good numbers. I'm getting 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour, which is seriously impressive. It might not be the most efficient electric car in the US, but it's definitely up there with the best of them. In terms of charging, going from 10 to 80% at a DC fast charger takes 43 minutes. It's faster than its predecessor, and it's faster than the Leaf or the Bolt, but it's nowhere near as quick as the 18 minutes that the EV6 can do it. But it's perfectly acceptable. Unfortunately, the Niro EV only comes with a 110 volt charging cable, and charging from that is unusably slow. 2 2.5 days for a full charge. Throw that charger in the trash and buy yourself a 240-volt charger, and you can top up the battery overnight in about 9 hours. But overall, when driving this car, the size of it feels just right. There's a good amount of interior space, and the smaller exterior dimensions make it really easy to drive. Plus, that smaller size allows it to be super efficient. And if you want to minimize your carbon footprint, this is what you want. Okay, let's talk price. The 2023 Niro EV starts at almost 41 grand for the base Wind model. The better equipped Wave version comes in at 46 grand. As tested with a couple options, this Niro EV Wave comes in at almost $48,000. And here's the problem with that. Even though it's in line with the average new car price of today, it's still quite a bit more expensive than others in its class. The price is closing in on the much more luxurious and much larger EV6. And keep in mind, if you want to be efficient in a similarly sized package, the Niro Hybrid with its identical exterior and interior is almost 20 grand less than this Niro EV. That's a lot of extra cash to go electric. The Chevy Bolt and Nissan Leaf are significantly cheaper, but the Niro EV offers a bit more range, more space, and the interior is a class above. What do you think? Are sensibly sized, efficient electric cars the future? Or are we destined for a world full of Escalade-sized behemoths? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon, or you can buy a Hello Road t-shirt to show your support. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you're well, and I'll see you soon.